I truly think I have the coolest job in the country. I
Indeed, you
get
do.
to meet all of these inspiring startups. These are ideas which you wouldn't believe in, but they have a true amount of conviction in it. And they are very, very focused on their true north.
We have brought to you 11 stories so far, chronicling some of the most exciting startups that are solving the problems of India and Bharat, from democratizing the shopping experience to easing the pain of travel. Today, we gather our thoughts and speak to an industry veteran who has worked for over 2 decades across the world to raise the technology, leadership, and team quotient for startups. For a conversation that is all about tuning out the noise and zeroing in on the signals, welcome to Crafting Bharat, a startup guide powered by AWS. I'm your host, Gautam Srinivasan. And with me today is Kumara Raghavan, India head for the startup sales segment at AWS. Kumara, great to have you on Crafting Bharat.
Thank you, Gautam. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. Let's start this conversation. It's a sort of a moral of the story effect. So we are going to look at trends. We are going to look at how this universe is shaping up and what are the challenges that a lot of the players face and how AWS is enabling them to overcome those challenges, Kumara. So let's start with, when traditionally the stories of startups, the headlines, we have always seen it emerge out of, say, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, NCR, these areas. But we are seeing Bharat in terms of tier 2 and tier 3 cities becoming a fertile ground for startups. I think 50% of the startups are registered with DPIIT, they recognize, and that shows you that this area is developing quite fast, especially for startups. So what's your sense of the transformative effect of Bharatiya startups in making India Atmanirbhar?
No, you're right, Gautam. I think when you look at all that's happened as of December 23, there are over 117,000 startups listed in DPIIT, and that's quite a phenomenal achievement. And as you say, a lot of this is coming not just from the tier 1 cities or the metros, but also from the tier 2, tier 3 cities. And when you look at the development of this country, I think the development has definitely gone on to the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and a lot of this is also something that the startups have powered and have enabled. So if you look at the jobs, for example, over 12.4 lakh jobs have been created, which is quite something. And then when you look at the startups today, there is a recognized startup from every state and union territory, which spans across 80% of the districts in this country. That truly is something. And so the power of innovation that's yet to be unleashed is something that we are all keenly looking forward to.
All right, let's look at how AWS enables startups to grow. And I want to take the starting phase first, because in running a startup, there's always a need to balance innovation and cost. So when we look at the starting phase, especially when you're building a minimum viable product, there's going to be a lot of experimentation involved, and you always have to be curious about upcoming consumer habits, trends, so on and so forth. So I want to understand, how is AWS helping startups build products without worrying about costs in that early stage?
No, I think you touched upon an important point. Often people see it as two diametrically opposite ends. It's either innovation or being very cost conscious, but I think they are really two sides of the same coin, and counterintuitively both go often hand in hand. So when you describe the journey of a startup typically, especially those in the early stage, they have come up with this bright idea, they're building their product, they're getting that MVP and then trying to achieve that product market fit. In this stage, there is a lot of experimentation that you need to do. You want see change to the customer experience, not minor incremental changes. And when you're doing that, you want to experiment with a varieties of technologies, and that's where AWS has the flagship Activate program, which we have had since 2013. And what that allows startups to do in the early stage is to use the AWS credits for compute, for storage, networking, for databases, and even for the advanced services like the AI/ML. And with this, they are able to experiment, fail fast, and have a low to no penalty for experimentation. So with this process, we really want to lower that cost of curiosity, if you can call it that. And once they reach that scale where they have realized that this experiment is working and then they can scale further, then they are on a different trajectory. And then the innovation and cost savings take a different path and different journey. There again, the approach for AWS has been to listen very, very closely to our customers and innovate on their behalf. So if I were to pick an example of technology-related innovation, So when you look at the typical compute, we have our custom chipsets, the Graviton, and with Graviton, compared to any other traditional x86 compute, it gives 40% more power to price performance benefits.
So the ROI improves
The
automatically.
ROI tremendously improves, and not only are you getting a better performance, but are you also saving on the cost side of things. That's purely on the innovation from the technology and then the cost savings that it delivers. But the other things that startups can also do is use some of our commercial levers. And one of the very popular mechanisms that startups tend to use is what we call as the spot pricing. So startups are able to use capacity that's in excess for a small window of time, and you can get as much as 90% discount on the on-demand pricing.
All right, this containerized world is bringing out new possibilities, but I love the line you mentioned on lowering the cost of curiosity. That's what matters, especially for startups who are trying many things to make sure that they have the right fit for the niche that they are catering to. Let's progress the phases right now, because when the startup progresses from its early phase, it's then trying to acquire more and more customers. So I want to understand, how does AWS help these startups in this next stage of, say, customer acquisition and team building? You know, if you can share some examples illustrating how AWS helps startups build connections with, say, customers and investors and so on and so forth.
No, absolutely, you're right. I think in that same journey that we described earlier, once a startup has got that product market fit, they've got their first customer and they've begun to scale, the way we have organized our teams, our programs, and the benefits that the startups can get is very much aligned to their stages of their life cycle. So to pick an example of MoEngage, which is in the customer experience space, when they wanted to expand their markets and go into the ASEAN markets, so we organized for them to meet 230 chief marketing officers from enterprises across 6 countries in ASEAN. And that translated to 7 opportunities which they were able to close. So that's one of the examples. But in a more structured way, we have a 3-pronged approach which startups can use, which is called the co-build, co-market, and co-sell. So what we help them do is, in the co-build, we help them with architectural principles so that the product that they are building is based on sound architecture which adheres well to how AWS and its customers prefer the solutions to be consumed. And then the second piece is on the co-marketing. So the MoEngage example was one. And then the third piece is around co-sell. Now, in all of this journey, there are a variety of mechanisms. And another one which I'd like to really dwell upon is since 2022, we began this AWS SaaS delegation to the US.
Okay.
Now, when you look at India, we build in India for the world. So SaaS is a big offering that we proudly take to the rest of the world. And when startups do that, a lot of founders are keen to understand how to enter a US market, for example. So the SaaS delegation helps them go through that journey. So we take them there, help them meet experts, meet startup founders who have been there and done that, and give them stories around how to price a product, how to package a product, how do you hire your sales team, and how do you understand the nuances of different customer segments even within US. And these are all journeys which is gathered through life experiences of other founders, which these startups then take.
I'm getting the sense of AWS being a high performance coach for a lot of these startups, is also helping them meet other players, understand how, say, those who have succeeded, what you can learn from them, meet investors, understand how those conversations go about. And especially in terms of the global interaction, the global dynamics, what's also important is when startups reach a scale enough to aim for, say, a global play, so to say. I want to understand, how does AWS's marketplace then enable them to export their ideas to other markets? Because these are the connections which matter, right? Especially when you're trying to take, as you mentioned, MoEngage trying to expand into the ASEAN market, or other examples and so on and so forth. Any best practices that you can share on, this export of ideas, what AWS does and what startups can do more, and how do startups handle that inflection point of growth and scale when they reach that juncture that you've done well in India, you want to export your idea to the global market? What's the best way to go about it?
No, you touched on marketplace, which is a way to look at marketplace is to think of it as an end-to-end supply chain for supplying the software. Now, on the supply side, you have our ISV partners or the SaaS-based startups who have their offering, and it has a tremendous amount of benefits on the supply side for them. Now, when they want to reach global scale, being on the AWS marketplace has a number of benefits for them. First is discovery. So when you're discovered by a customer who has a high propensity to buy, that's again a big benefit that is very hard to get otherwise. And you can't really scale yourself to different parts of the world. That is the first leg of it. The second is when you're making updates and upgrades to your own software, that can be deployed through the marketplace seamlessly to all of your customers. The third is when a small startup is trying to go and sell to an enterprise customer, often they go through an onboarding journey, which can be quite a lengthy process for both the startup and for the enterprise. But if they are on the marketplace, the enterprise customer is already used to buying different technologies through AWS. And when it's part of the marketplace, it comes through as part of the AWS offering.
It's tried and tested. But any examples you can share of say a startup in India which did well, wanted to export its idea to the global marketplace and use AWS's marketplace to kind of achieve that objective?
Absolutely. I can pick on Yellow.ai. They got onto the marketplace and they have done all the right things to list their products, list their offerings, and they wanted to expand both in India but also in ASEAN and in the US. So they've been able to use the marketplace effectively to scale. And from a customer's perspective, again, on the supply side, on the demand side, it again has tremendous benefits because customers also have a certain commitment with AWS, and this can be subsumed within that same commitment.
All right. I now want to understand, how does the nature of what AWS has to offer for startups differ from sector to sector? Because you're such a large player. I think I've heard 80% of startups use AWS. So, and you are across so many sectors. So when I look at, say, EdTech or space tech or fintech, these ecosystems are thriving like never before in today's time. So, and of course, India is the third largest startup ecosystem these days. So from sector to sector, what AWS has to offer, how does it differ?
No, I think it's great that you touched upon that point. When we look at cloud, it's amazing to see how it has a very horizontal application across segments. Now, when you put the power of cloud in the hands of all of these startups, it's amazing to see the level of innovation they produce in different
like a cross-pollination of ideas and innovation. Right?
Totally. And to your point, if you pick an example from fintech, so Five, one of our customers, previously known as Early Salary, they service young professionals who want to take loans well before their salary has come in. So today they service over 8 lakh customers per month. They have dispersed over 6 million loans worth 20,000 crores. And they've been able to scale tremendously using our services like the Amazon Redshift and Amazon SageMaker. They're able to build a lot of fraud detection service, which is proprietary technology which they have developed using the Amazon services. And they've been able to scale tremendously. But if you pick other areas like healthcare, so Healthify today, so they again use Amazon SageMaker, they use Amazon Bedrock. And what they're able to do is to have advanced call analytics for their coaches. So when their coaches are coaching different people across the world, and a lot of it happens virtually, they're able to get inputs on the level of empathy that they need to have, what their client is going through, and also gives them cues on how to address the requirements of their clients. So that's demonstrated to show as much as 75% improvement in their time that they're able to use.
Now we come to the touchy side of things, right? Because no journey is without potholes, so to say. So take us through some of the conversations that you've had with startups on the challenges that they face, especially around, say, building capabilities and mastering new technologies to future-proof this ecosystem of their business. Because the narrative has now shifted from pure growth to profitability. Because earlier you could talk about, MAUs, DAUs going up, not really worry about, my VC is going to come back to me and say, where are my profits? But today, the ecosystem, the narrative is more about profitability. So take us through the conversations that you've had, any anecdotes that you could share on challenges around mastering new technologies to stay future-proof.
Sure. I think when you look at what startups are going through, and I think you touched on a number of these topics that they're going through. But specifically, the conversations that we have tend to be around currently how to use generative AI, which is one of the most transformational technologies of our times. And what they're looking to do is how can they improve the efficiency of their own employees, creativity of their employees, but also improve the customer's journey. When they try out all this, and this is a perfectly new technology, they want to do it right. And that's where our philosophy has been, you have a new technology, but there are some foundational principles which is best adhered to if you want to get this right. And we look at it in different dimensions. The very first is that we provide choice for the customer. The first principle is that there is no one single solution that's going to be the catch-all for all the problems that you have. So for example, on our Amazon Bedrock, we have a variety of large language models. And we have different use cases for different large language models. And if a customer has a process which uses different scenarios, they will have that choice to pick that. So that's one of the foundational principles around choice. The second is around security. So AWS has been about security from day one. And it's important that when a startup trusts their data and puts it on a system, they want to ensure that it doesn't go out. It's not used to train the large language model, and it doesn't take away their competitive advantage. That is something that we really ensure that security is paramount to what the startup is working on as well.
And that is what is driving a lot of traffic towards cloud computing in general, right? And as a result of which we are seeing AI come into the forefront, because the power of the compute is handled by you, the power of innovation is handled by the startups. And when you talk about Gen AI, we have featured InVideo, we featured Avatar.ai, they're all doing some fantastic things. InVideo is converting words into video and creating a new creator ecosystem, and Avatar is working with a lot of the e-commerce brands and providing, in a sense, converting 2D images to 3D, which has driven a lot of customer conversions for their customers itself. So Gen AI and the possibilities of the cloud, they are immense. But when we look at finance, agri-tech, education, which impacts Bharat, there is a lot of possibility there as well. So tell us about the work that AWS has done in enabling startups to overcome their challenges by using AI to meet their customer needs of Bharat. What would you have to say on that?
Yeah, I'll pick a few examples. If you look at Dehat, they have a philosophy of farmer first. And they service today about 1.8 million farmers in the country across 11 states. And they use 11,000 Dehat centers. What they help the farmers do is address many problems in their journey, which includes firstly classification of the crops, prediction of the diseases, and even remediation suggestions, and then also predicting crop yield so that the supply chain is done efficiently for them. So they use Amazon SageMaker, they use Amazon Redshift. With all of this, what they're able to do is they are able to save as much as 15% for the farmers. They're able to increase the predictability of the yield by as much as 90%, and the disease prediction and its remediation, the accuracy has gone up by as much as 80%. So that's on the farming side of things. If you take fintech as another example, we have Open. So they are in the business of helping CFOs and finance teams on automating both payables and receivables. So in that journey, they have begun on AWS right from day one, building a secure, scalable model. And they use the Amazon Aurora for their database, and they also use the Amazon Elastic Kubernetes service. And as they have kept scaling, one of the things that they wanted to do was to use the power of Gen AI. So a couple of months ago, they ran a 36-hour hackathon where all of their teams got involved, tried to experiment with their ideas and see how they can make it relevant for their open money product and improve the customer experience, and see how they can also productize it.
You mentioned about AWS Activator earlier. I now want you to talk more about AWS's Accelerator Programs, because for startups with game-changing ambitions with generative AI, I want to understand how do AWS's Accelerator Programs enable them to be sort of up and running within weeks, and the most exciting use cases that you see, which are reshaping the Indian startup landscape.
Yeah, so we ran ML Elevate, which is the cohort for ML-based startups. And we had a number of startups come up through that program. So we had Blend, we had Dubbers, we had a variety of these startups come in. If I pick Blend as an example, what they are doing is they are making commercial grade photography accessible to SMBs. Now, if you're an SMB trying to sell a product on Amazon, for example, and you want
polished experience.
Yeah, you want a really good photograph of your product, and you can take 3 clicks of your product, and what they are able to do is remove the background, polish it, change it in a matter of seconds, and make it readily available to be displayed on 16 different e-commerce sites and 8 different social media vehicles. So that really makes sure that a small SMB player doesn't have to hire professional photography to make their product highly visible. So that's one of the use cases that we have seen.
Anything else that you can add? Anything else you have in your, wide repertoire of startups that you work with?
Yeah, we have a number of use cases. Again, if I were to pick Decentro, which is again a fintech. Now, what they are trying to do is when it comes to fintechs wanting to use APIs or SDKs for their banking requirements, they try to automate that. Now, in this process, again, they have been using various services from Amazon, but one of the things that they have tried to use is the Amazon Code Whisperer. So that automates the developers' undifferentiated heavy lifting workload, and they've been able to save as much as 10% of the developers' productivity.
All right. You know what's fantastic? I've been covering this sector for over 20 years. And from a very theoretical conversation on possibilities, right? Whenever I used to do these technological stories, the next innovation is coming. I'm loving the fact that now we are in an era where technology is so focused on outcomes. We are solving this problem. We have stated so many use cases, right? And on this show, we've brought everything from how financial innovation is kind of shaping up the fintech ecosystem, the media ecosystem. Broadly, there are so many changes in terms of outcomes that technology is driving. How do you feel about that?
No, that is very critical when you talk to a customer, and that's been our philosophy. We have these 16 leadership principles. The first one is about customer obsession. And one of the things we really want to do when we have that conversation with our customer is, can we help them make a difference to their end customer? And that's got to be measurable in terms of output. So all of our discussions are around what matters most to our customers, and then see how we can map the back-end process.
All right, and I'm sure you must be having millions of conversations over, the vast experience that you bring to the table. So I want to understand, as we kind of head into the final leg of this conversation, how have you evolved as a leader? Because you speak to the best and brightest minds in the country, all looking to become the next unicorn or the next decacorn. Personally, how do you see yourself evolving as a leader because of all these experiences that you've had?
I may be biased, but I truly think I have the coolest job in the country.
Indeed,
I get to meet all of these inspiring startups. I think the first thing that really strikes me and inspires me is their conviction in their idea and the power of that idea to change the trajectory for their customers, for the country, even for the world. And often these are ideas which you wouldn't believe in, but they have a true amount of conviction in it. And they are very, very focused on their true north.
That reminds me of the conversation I had with Rajat on this series, where he said that we never thought that we wouldn't fail.
Right.
That was a very key part of their inception, the inception of their. But please continue.
Yeah, so I think it's quite mapped to one of the Amazon philosophies that you should be prepared to be misunderstood for a long time, and you should be okay with it, right? And we know that theoretically, but when you see that happen, I think that's truly inspiring. So that's one which I've really imbibed. The other thing which I really see embodied in my team, and I think that's one that we have really taken on well, is the degree of ownership. When you go work with a startup, you seldom hear things like, this is not my job. And if they find a problem and if it's not in their job description, that doesn't stop them from solving it. And I think that's another area that's really truly inspiring and that we have taken up, and we consider ourselves the largest startup in the world. And I think that again is a big positive that I take from startups. But the third one is really about developing people. There's only so far that you can go by yourself. You need to develop the next generation of leaders. You've got to invest in your people, and not just the technology side of things.
Absolutely.
And I think that truly scales you.
I think we touched upon that with Vinayak. I mean, I always like speaking to technical co-founders because I also want to understand that journey of, you love being a coder, you just want to be left alone and work on your idea. But as you evolve your business, your responsibilities also expand, right? You have to build your team, have customer conversations, partner conversations, and you have to be out there selling your brand. So it's interesting to see how people themselves evolve when they are a founder, say a technical founder, to be a CEO and founder and expand their ambit of responsibilities. Now, as we wrap up this conversation, there's always the moral of the story which comes. So what message would you like to give to all the startup founders who are watching out of today and tomorrow, who are looking to be the best and brightest? What message would you like to tell them?
No, firstly, I think we are in this land of opportunity and potential. And we have a lot of tailwinds going for us. We have the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. We have the second largest developer base in this country. And we are poised to become the third largest economy in the world as well. So we have all these tailwinds going. I think if anyone has a brilliant idea, this is the time to go and make that work. I'd say that is the first one. The second is, you got to constantly update yourself, use the latest technologies, and generative AI today is going to be truly transformational. You all got to find ways of making sure that you use that efficiency and the power that it brings with you. Thirdly, a startup founder's life is always filled with highs and lows. But the key thing is they are not alone. I think we've got a very, very vibrant ecosystem and everyone's cheering and wanting them to succeed. So I think the whole power of the country, the power of the ecosystem is behind powering every startup success in this country.
I'm reminded of an old ad jingle. Yahi hai right time, baby. Aha. All right. On that note, it's time not just to wrap up this episode, but this series of Crafting Bharat, a startup guide powered by AWS. Of course, this podcast is an initiative of NewsReach. Kumara, thank you very much for joining us on what has been a very illuminating talk. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you for having me.
All right. And a big thank you, of course, to our audience who have been part of the journey that is Crafting Bharat. We've had the chance to compare notes with founders on what makes their business tick, gotten to know a bit about the personal side of their personality, and address many of the queries sent by you. We've enjoyed being part of this road trip of ideas with you, but for now, it looks like we have to stop and refuel for the way ahead. Do remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to keep in touch with the latest developments in India's vast startup universe. Till next time, though, this is your host Gautam Srinivasan signing off. Crafting Bharat, a startup guide powered by AWS, is an initiative of NewsReach in association with VC Circle, produced by HT Smartcast. The director and executive producer of this show is Deepthi Ahuja. The assistant producer is Veda Mohan. The video editor on the show is Kuljit Singh, and the audio editor is Amrinder Singh. Technical direction and production by Sharon Verghese. Director of photography is Muhaib Khan. On location sound by Gulshan Sharma. Online edit by Ali Virani. Tech assists by Tejas Patel and Zaki Ali. Production head is John Massey. The teleprompter operators on the show have been Sunny and Heather Rizvi. और हमारी खूबसूरती का राज मेकअप by Naushad Mohammed.